What the? I don't even know what to say. Maybe let's just get caught up with where we're at right now. So it's early, or no, it's not. It's mid-February, February 10th, 2025. And I've got one song basically done at this point, and I'm working on the second. It's very on and off. It's been tricky to find time. And when I've had the time, it's been tricky to find motivation. It's a very strange emotional soup I'm living in at the moment. You can't even get up off the couch. You're not really going to make an album, are you? So, but things seem to be going well. And the hope is that, well, the motivation is that I'll get something done before we have to leave. So I haven't really made anything of substance since we moved out here. Weirdly, life took a weird downward spiral, basically from the time we moved out here. But this has ended up being a really nice sort of little creative space. As you can see behind me, I'm well and truly nested here. Though ironically, I'm not really using many guitars right now. I'm not going to go too into all the technical specs with what I'm doing for this record, but pretty much everything I'm doing is this relatively poorly assembled kit guitar. Anyway, this was $150 and it sounds way better than it should. I'm using this, I'm using one bass guitar. I'm using some of my pedals and my amp and things like that for some stuff, but a lot of stuff I'm doing digitally as well. The whole ethos with doing this record was to make it as simple as I can technically. For me, option paralysis is a very real thing, and I don't want to just be so frozen up by the technical details that I don't actually make anything. This is all an attempt to make something as honest and straightforward as possible. But yeah, keeping it simple, keeping it honest, and I'm hoping that will help to sort of expedite some of the process, so I can actually get something of substance done before we're gone. The intention for me was to be here for a long time. So it's kind of a shame, really. I'm not sure how long it's going to take to sell because it's a little bit of a weird rundown house. And there's an element of excitement because, you know, we need to move on. I need to move on. And I have plans for my future. But every record I've done has ended up being important in retrospect. All the way back through to the On Wings of Wax stuff, and before that. I can look back at each of them and remember what was going on at that point in my life. And like I said, I haven't really done much of anything here. And I want something to look back on and say, hey, I remember that house. Or moreover, I remember that relationship. So I just thought it would be prudent to quickly establish maybe a timeline of events, because you're not coming in straight at the start. I guess I started Christmas time, earlier than Christmas, really. The first riff started going down, yeah, probably. I could check, but late last year. Today's the 11th of February, and I think I have internally signed off on the first track. But there's still a lot of mixing and adjustment to do. Because the overall aesthetic is a lot different to what I've done in the past. But also, clean vocals are happening, which is a big new one for me. Because the clean vocals for me this time are a major staple. I'm still doing the shouty screamy, but I'm doing a good solid amount of clean vocal, which is way outside my comfort zone. I've been working on my singing for years now, and I'm still not great, but I think I can deliver pretty earnest, intense, clean vocal. It's beside the point. It's difficult for me. I have to spend a lot of time at the microphone trying to get it right. I don't have the stamina to really do it for long periods of time, and nor do I really have the mixing prowess to make it sound good. But I've done it. I think it's sounding pretty nice. But this, I think like every record I've done in the past, has presented a new, unique challenge for me and the way I do things, which is good, right? I've never wanted to carbon copy my previous work. This documentary is going to be like 4 hours long at this rate, because all I do is ramble, go on tangents. First track is done, I think, and maybe what I'm going to do is maybe a little social media teaser, because over the course of the next few weeks I want to try get it out. Modern streaming platform stuff makes this difficult because there's so much to prepare. But I'd like to get a lead track out just so it's in existence, gauge some interest, hopefully garner some interest as I work on the rest of the record. So yeah, it's exciting times. Making art in the midst of adverse emotional states is super commonplace, right? It's where a lot of good art comes from, is through the lens of some kind of adversity or inner turmoil, all those cliches. Whether I call myself an artist, I don't know, but I guess if I really find myself in the mire of whatever it is I'm struggling with, that perhaps to some counterintuitively or with a certain sense of irony, I can't make anything, it just becomes absolutely exhausting. I default to just basic function. And I'm glad to say that my basic habits stay intact. I manage to sleep at a decent hour and make myself reasonable food and stick to my exercise. But then the rest of the time is just sleep. I'd love to be in a space where I feel comfortable enough that I can just focus on creating and getting this record done, but I guess I've elected to make it in the midst of the absolute chaos that we're existing in right now. But particularly at the moment, we're just in the process of trying to get this place on the market. And this happened right before, geez, I can't even say it. I haven't even fully come to terms with it. My now ex went to house sit at a family member's place for more than a week. So I've spent that entire stretch here on my own, which is the longest I've been in this house on my own. And the longest her and I have been apart in nearly 14 years. I suppose it's a valid thing to be saddened by, to feel upset by, insofar that anyone who has negative or mixed or painful emotions about losing someone significant in their life, it's okay that I feel like shit about this. We've lived in this house as though we weren't going anywhere. It's made it a really emotional process. Like the idea of putting this thing in someone else's hands. It's like I'm giving a piece of myself away. I feel really isolated. And I'm okay. I mean, this will be out well after the fact, so it will be evident that I'm okay. I've gotten through this. But there are moments, especially in this last week, being on my own for really long stretches. You go to some dark places. Alright, because you're going to forget this shit. The verse to this song, the fade-in bits on the rhythm guitar are just... and... right? And then the little, like, the build-up, the, like, B section of the verses. And the lead was like... it's like starting on the 12th fret up here, then 15, then 12, or like 11, then 10, 8, and then 7 bendy, which is accenting the main, bit. And the build up for that was the same chords, but like the suspended. In case you need any of this, it's been ages since I've shot any footage for this. I'm conscious not to talk about the house too much and the relationship that's deteriorated within it. But it's become so apparent, I mean, it's probably always been apparent, but making this record has been so much about that. Because the house is officially for sale, which has created a kind of new sense of urgency to make sure I get this done before I have to pack up the studio and leave. I think it's more that it creates a sort of it itches at the emotional scar of everything that's happening. I don't know how else to put it, really. I saw the for sale sign go up, and that day, just this wave of, well, mixed emotions, but also inspiration really came from it. I wrote the most prolific volume of lyrics, or it was really poetry, I suppose, that I've written ever. I think it'll become part of the opening track. I think the record has a shape now that I've got that sort of idea for the opening track. I've kind of reverted to my old ways of ambient interludes. I just really like atmospheric music. I'm a big fan of Lowercase Noises. Andy Offling, who's from early YouTube, he used to sit at his pedal board doing the tweaking pad swell thing. Big, massive fan. Anyway, And I've got enough here to call it a record once it's all done. I have plans for the outro track set, and I just have to record that. That's probably going to be an acoustic track, which I'm going to try record in one take on the property somewhere outside, using just a field recorder and make it sound really raw. So there's still a lot to do. I haven't written vocals for 1.5 tracks. Ironically, I have a set of vocals for the track I'm working on now that isn't even finished yet. But it has shape, it has bookends, and I just gotta fill it in, which makes it feel closer to done than it actually is. But it's gonna be really interesting how people connect with this, because it's an immensely personal story. I'm sure it's an idea that people can connect with. That sense of home, that sense of loss, that sense of trying to find where you belong, what you're for. But I figured there was no point, and it's certainly never been my way to sort of tell stories in vague terms, right? You know, accessible music insofar that it's vague and relatable. It seemed to me I had one opportunity to tell a really specific story about my specific experience in one specific spot of a home and people and a place I grew immensely fond of, and I'm sad to leave. My intention of mentioning all this is because the home itself I am trying to make part of the record and part of the listening experience. The intention behind going outside to record an acoustic track is hopefully I'll get some birdsong and maybe some rushes of wind or some noise from the neighbours. It'll be a little 2-minute time capsule, a specific moment captured in the place that the record is about. I want the place this record was made to really bleed into the record itself. Now, I'm standing here at my little keyboard synth station because there was, and I wish I had captured this in the moment, there's been some cool moments of inspiration just using the stuff I have lying around. Part of what I really do is tinker and try find strange ways to get noises, especially like that atmospheric ambient like synth pad stuff. I probably take long walks to get to sounds I could probably end up finding in 5 minutes on some soft synth, right? But I'm not great with that stuff. I just play with presets essentially. But I got this thing, which is an old Yamaha just digital keyboard, I assume for students, the PSS 280. I've had it my entire life, I think, and I've never had the heart to throw it away, and for good reason, as it turns out. This actually featured on parts of The Long Way Home, which was my last on Wings of Wax record. I've been sitting here collecting dust, but I know I can pull good sounds out of it, and I haven't got it plugged in properly, but I'll just listen to this. Now obviously that's running through some other digital stuff. And what I discovered I could do is this thing has like a volume slider and like a proper sliding, is it called a sliding switch? Yeah, I was sat there that night just flicking through patches just with some basic plugins on and finding the right sound, and I stood here for an hour just trying to find the right chord sequence. But there's been really cool moments like that, which has led me to make, essentially for each heavy song, there's a little ambient interlude in between, whether it be with my guitar and the pedals, the mood and the Line 6 DL4, just creating some swilly, glitchy stuff, or big synth pads and just trying to build texture and layers and like little opportunities to rest in between the real heavy stuff. I'm not trying to make a specific thing or curate my tastes so that they appeal to a specific audience. I'm just making exactly what I want to make. And that feels really good and really rewarding. And probably reduces my reach and my appeal to potential listening audiences. But what are you going to do? That might have been it. See, doing bass parts is a problem for me. First and foremost because I'm not a good bass player. Second of all, it's because I really like the way bass sounds in my mixes and I have it really loud and really aggressive. And so it imparts really interesting character into the songs. And so I try to write parts that aren't just sitting on root notes. I mean, fundamentally, I'm just chasing the root notes, but bouncing around on octaves and trying to do some fills. Just to make it more than usual bass parts. Cat doesn't help. Have some vocal attempts. I don't think my technique is very good. And I don't often have a lot of takes in me because I fatigue really quickly. But I just crank it up really loud when I got a good part and you let a few takes fly, you know? Do you remember the old place? Our tiny backyard? Our violent neighbors! With complete disregard for the life! And in case anyone's wondering why I'm miles back from the microphone, is because it just sounds better. Rather than mess too much with volume automation in here, in the box, I'm using physical microphone proximity to get interesting sounds. I had such high hopes for the new! Oh my god. Multiple voice cracks. So we're now in mid-June. And admittedly, it's early morning. But you can probably hear in my voice that I'm a little hoarse, and we're well and truly into working on vocals for the record. An update seemed apt now because the instrumentals are actually basically, or really completely done. Yeah, I'm doing the documentary. This whole record feels like so much work. Living in this really weird sort of liminal space between our old life and my new one, whenever that starts. And the house has to be kept really tidy and sparse because people are coming to inspect it. So all the things, or a lot of the things that made this place feel like home are away in boxes or hidden in cupboards. And I described it to a friend as feeling like living on a set, like a stage set for a play. Because it kind of looks and feels and smells like home, but it's not quite. I'm really not great at talking about the record itself, am I? Just go on rambles about... It's all interlinked is the thing. I'm telling the story of this house and of my life here, and I get a lot of things that went wrong, but they're inextricably linked, the album and the house. Which is why I think it's going to be a really cool and special thing. I'm the only person that can make this record. But to get back on practical terms, I think that sort of pressure with everything that's involved artistically and emotionally is making it really the most difficult thing I've tried to make. And unfortunately things are going to go a little bit slow now because I am not the best vocalist, especially when it comes to heavy vocals. And there's a twofold issue because there's the practical, physiological struggle of, it's mostly with the screams that I can only do so much, one, in like a session before I'm completely fatigued, and two, if I work myself to the point of hoarseness, my voice doesn't sound really good, any good, and I can't really do any takes. So I may need to recover for the next day or two and then give it another shot. I'm really happy with how the instrumentals have turned out. There's a really good flow to the record, and the first couple of songs I've put vocals on have turned out really well, and it's sort of set a certain standard or precedent, which is just making finishing the work really challenging. Really, I've only got one more song where there's a lot of lyrics that need fleshing out. Because in the last album, the last heavy track on the album has probably all the lyrics are there, and I just need to shuffle them to fit. As a lyricist, I'm actually pretty pleased with what I'm coming up with. I think I'm finding a sort of unique voice. I quite enjoy, without the restrictions of melody and cadence, I quite like writing prose and poetry. Now that'll be most evident, I think, on the first track, the introductory track on the album, because that was just a massive poem that I wrote. Yeah, the challenge is just getting the vocal delivery right, especially the clean vocals, man. I'm so self-conscious, but we're not too far away. A couple more really good dedicated sessions, and the recording will be done. And the mix is already a decent way there. Because of my process, it's actually, like, the back end mixing is not going to be that challenging because I do at least half of that work up the front end. And maybe to get a little into the technical details, basically setting a mix template before I even start recording, I find to be really, really helpful. The whole fix it in post thing is, if it's not already obvious these days, is bullshit. You really want to know the aesthetic and the sound that you're looking for before you really get into it. Some of this comes with practice and experience, because you know what you can tweak after the fact, but you really need the meat and potatoes of your sound set before you go in. Drum sounds, like the broad strokes of your guitar tones, the way the bass is going to kind of click into your guitar. You really want that sorted as best you can before you set off on tracking, because I mean, it's made easier these days with like amp plugins and stuff, right? Because you can actually tone tweak. It's like reamping, but 100 times easier. So you can get away with more than you used to, but you still want to have a good idea of what you're shooting for. Not least of which, because it's a lot less overwhelming when you come to the mix, because you kind of feel like you've done a lot of the work already. So I'm looking forward to seeing how this record looks and sounds. And I think I might even do the sort of grown-up thing and set the release date a few months down the track. Give myself a lot of time to set up the artwork and maybe try find some means to do some interviews, or hopefully some people are interested in talking to me about the record. Just so we're all on the same page, I feel very awkward recording myself doing vocal takes, and my hair looks ridiculous. But this is one of the last, if not maybe the last, vocal session I'll be doing. We have like 2/3 of the last song left to go. And the only contingency is whether or not my voice will hold up for this long. And also, this is being recorded on my phone where I've got my lyrics written down, so I'm going from memory just for you, documentary. Do you remember our first date? Yeah, neither do I! You fixed the strings in my jacket! It's also been interesting to note my vocals changing as I've been doing more and more of the record. I think my vocal cords have been strengthening to a noticeable degree because I don't scream for bands in my spare time. This has been a process of getting my vocals back up to snuff for the sake of doing a record. The early takes from like the first couple of songs I think still sound good, but they sound a lot airier and coarser, and now I'm finding myself with a tighter, higher sort of fry scream. But at points I want to get back to that sort of coarser, like hardcore, bellowy kind of thing. And I'm finding it harder to get back to. It's interesting. I don't know. My voice has changed by doing this. Held my hand by the bar as we left the show. Dead letter circus, as I recall. I'm trying to get full takes too. I'm trying not to punch in too much. The whole vocal thing, well, the whole record's really kind of raw, but the vocals especially. Like there's a lot of parts where I'm doing backup vocals or like layered screams, and I'm not caring too much about syncing them up perfectly. If one scream's held out for longer than the other, I don't really care. It's got that rough edge to it, which I think is not only cool, but serves maybe like the emotional intent of the record. God, it's so... I know you can't see me right now, but it's so fucking hard judging your own vocal takes. And it's like sometimes just a weird little timing thing. I can be slightly ahead of the click, and even like when the take itself sounds really good, it's really annoying. It's crazy too, man, because this song in particular, Homesick, I've called it. It's kind of a reverse chronological exploration of a lot of really intensely personal things. And the lyrics, though you might not be able to tell, actually... There are certain lines I worried that just won't make any fucking sense to an average listener. Which I think, though, is kind of cool. Taking a bit of influence from, like, Pianos Become the Teeth and that sort of thing. At the end of the day, I don't say this, like, harshly, but I don't care. I'm just trying to tell this story as honestly as I can. Let's try hit this second chorus and see if I can remember all the words. It was my birthday too! The earth stood still at the sight of you! We fought back the light! The gods themselves dare not! Oh, that's wrong. I'm figuring out the phrasing as I go as well, which is not conducive to vocal longevity, but... The gods them! Oh, that was definitely wrong. Alright, don't tell anyone I'm punching in. I liked the take up until that point. We fought back the light! The gods themselves dare not rend us apart! just sounds terrible. Anyway, leave me to it. No one's here, man. Why am I nervous? Take one. God only knows. Take two. Fuck. Take three. And that's the end of the album. Okay. So we're now in mid-August. I think it's the 12th or something like that. And once again, it's been quite some time since filming for this. Truth of the matter is, I went through a period where I didn't think I was going to finish it. I didn't see the point. So I just stopped filming for it, and to that end, you have missed some of the tail end of the recording process, primarily finishing off what has now become a crooked shelf, and like the tail end of the vocals for Homesick. I just didn't bother. The mixing process as well. Yeah, I didn't think I was going to make anything of this until I decided to jump back into the edit and thought maybe that there was some merit in seeing it through. And I got all in my head about it because this hasn't turned out anything like the studio documentaries I've always liked to watch. I've learned so much from about studio stuff, recording stuff, production stuff, from watching these things. And this is not at all what this has turned out to be. But I came to the realization, especially in watching back the sort of in-progress edit, that this outcome is still okay and interesting in its own right. It's almost like a companion piece to the record, because you're seeing inside my head. This is very blatant and honest stream of consciousness that I'm filming as I do this, or as I've done this record. And this is the thing, because you shouldn't look up to me, which sounds really self-deprecating, but I mean that in the sense of like my technical acumen as a musician, or as a mixing engineer or production engineer, or as a songwriter or whatever. All the tricks and processes and methods I've learned have just been bastardizations and manipulations of things I've learned online, and just through sheer force of will and messing around until I just found things that worked. I'm not technically gifted, and so there seemed no point really, especially in hindsight, of making a thing that was focused on the technical or production side of making a record. It's been done. Music found me, or I found music, as just means of self-expression. It's just my artistic medium. It's how I process the world, it's how I process my emotion, and it's how I try to convey the things I feel and don't feel there needs to be any justification for making sense. It's just raw and simple and kind of unfiltered. I don't know why I loathe to apply the term to myself, but being an artist, the tools I use and the methods I use are all just somewhat arbitrary. Music is just the world I fell into. But the music, but the finished piece of art is always what I've been pursuing. So none of that technical shit matters. So that very long walk is all simply to say that all things being equal, I'm glad of where we've landed with this thing. Because this is about, the last 12 months as it pertains to my experience. of going through a really difficult breakup and losing a lot of things I felt were really important, and essentially watching as the life I thought I was building crumbled around me. And so this documentary, as much as the album itself, is just a reflection, and not even a reflection of that in any pure sense. It's, I guess, my interpretation of everything that's happened, my view on the world through this really challenging period. And I say that even sort of looking back on the record now, listening to it, because some amount of healing has happened as a result of making the album and as a result of some, I guess, other personal growth. There are times I listen to it where I don't even feel that close to it anymore, that I was almost a different person in those moments, where there's some really spiteful, angry, accusatory kind of parts in the record that probably don't in any way really reflect reality, but certainly reflect where I was, like what I was feeling in those moments. All that being said, I'm still incredibly proud of the thing that I made. Ironically enough, I'm really proud of the technical component of it. I've mixed and mastered it all on my own and done all the artwork on my own. It's DIY in the absolute purest sense. Yeah, the mix I think came out really fantastically. Sent it out to some of my dearest musical friends. They're just my dearest friends, and they're also musicians because of course they are. And I've got that sort of seal of approval. Listeners' fatigue was very real, but also the emotional fatigue. I've never been this close to a thing I've made. Which is kind of crazy to say when you consider yourself something akin to an artist, right? And just making things that you believe in. I guess in hindsight, a lot of the things I made over the last 15 years have been with some measure of distance. Or maybe I've been unable to fully access, or I didn't have any vocabulary for the emotions I was feeling, so. But suffice it to say that, yeah, this record is it cuts close to the bone. And so I believed it to be good, both in terms of content and, the listening experience, but I was much too close to it by then. But yeah, I think it's ready to go. And that's also part of why I haven't filmed anything for the documentary since before I finished it. Because when I listened to that, when I mastered it and exported the files and listened to it over a dozen times, when I was satisfied with the final product, I kind of just switched off from it. Which, I guess I haven't given it that much thought, but perhaps it goes to show that I was just done. And that's one thing I've experienced in the past as well with other records I've made, is this kind of, for me, there's this internal sense of when a thing is finished. Pertaining to a certain kind of fatigue as much as anything else. Like, I can't give this thing anymore, and so it's time to ship it. Which isn't to say I kind of cut the cord too early or anything like that. I think it's cohesive. It's the best thing I've made. There's a story. It's start to end. It as a piece of art, it did the thing. It does the thing I think I want it to do. But I think the most important thing is it did, for me, what I hoped it would. I don't even know if I had a hope for it going in. I think I was just really fucking sad and I had to make something to try and process whatever the hell was going on in my brain. But yeah, maybe that's why I was able to unplug as soon as I felt it was done, because yeah, you know, emotions were processed, demons were expelled, whatever other fucking cliche you want to label it with. And that's not to say I'm out of the woods. I'm still sitting in the home where this story unfolded, and I've been living here on my own essentially for months at this point. And I still feel a lot of the loss and the grief and the confusion and a deep loneliness. But making this thing has been a big step in the right direction. All's this to say is that by the time you're seeing this, the record should be available. It has to go out on October 10th because that'll be a year to the day that everything started. I guess between now, in this moment in time, and October 10th, there's really just the practical things to get done. Ship the masters out to streaming services and try my luck with a few like media outlets, see if anyone wants to do some interviews or reviews. Weirdly, I'm not that invested in what people think about it. I can't really be fucked with the marketing of it all because I think it'll kind of spoil it. And all that horribly fucking practical self-promotion just really spoils it for me. I think it spoils it for most artists out there, and for those trying to make money from it, it's just a necessary evil. I'll try, because I want people to hear it, but I figure it's just going to find the ears that it needs to. But perhaps I'll launch one more single and try and make a couple videos in the name of, you know, some asinine notion of artistic expression or justification. And then that's it. Ship it. I'm not really sure I'll have much else to say. This got way deeper and more introspective than I was intending. But hey, if you watched this far, I'm just going to say it now because I don't know if I'm going to record any more for this. But no, seriously, thank you. Yeah, this is as much as I could possibly give to any piece of art I've ever made. So if you've taken the time to listen to it, try to understand it, share it with your friends, let it in, I suppose, you know? Like really experience it for what it is. Like I couldn't ask for anything more. Yeah, the idea that anyone could hear this it's remarkable. And I mean that in the sense of like how humbling it makes me feel and how much gratitude it fills me with. To my bandmates, Dale and Adam, a different Adam, thank you. They've been there for me through a lot of this, both as really dear friends and as musicians with ears I trust, because this record wouldn't be what it is without them. And there's Zach and there's Yasin as well, who have both been really great supports. Listening to all the demos and giving thoughts and feedback, yeah, it was invaluable. And yeah, thank you to you, viewer or listener. This is a It's a big deal for me. That's it. 4,940 days. Enjoy.